Actually, it's funny, my teammates this morning at breakfast, they're like, hey, what are you going to talk about today? And I'm like, I don't know, actually. Sometimes with EPI, we've done like 7 steps to success for crowdsourcing, but I don't think we're going to do that today. We'll kind of take a different route and maybe talk a little bit about some hopes and dreams or some aspirations that we're kind of looking towards, and potentially even looking to all of us as part of this movement to kind of think about and maybe, food for thought. All right. Maybe I should do a quiz or something. Okay. Actually, this is a great quote, and this was a big inspiration for my presentation, and that's why EPI just got it 10 minutes ago, and I didn't meet any of the deadlines for the presentation, but John Patel, this quote is just recent, I think it's like in the last week, and I thought it was really great. It talked about this whole idea of, the world could be a far better place if we embrace some key principles like transparency, integrity. And so that's really inspired my content this afternoon. So 5 things to think about. So I just want to take you through them. First one, trust and transparency. We hear this a lot. We're working with some companies that do work in this space. But I think that this is one of the kind of the areas that I think we can really embrace as a crowdsourcing movement, crowdsourcing practitioners, and those that embrace crowdsourcing as part of their business. We're seeing, a blur between what's public information, what's private information. We're seeing some stories come out about brands that are maybe not being completely true with their consumers, maybe even their own employees in the market, about what they're doing. The Panama Papers, I think this has been another wake-up call for, okay, so now we have governments that are moving money offshore, yet, kind of the average person is being held accountable for their taxes. And then we've got movements like Who Made My Clothes? Has anybody seen that movement? It's really cool. It's kind of a social media campaign where they're basically showing people in the factories or wherever they are, and they're kind of putting their hand up and they're saying, I'm making your clothes. So how do we bring transparency to that supply chain of the things that we consume and use every day? But I think, what's starting to happen, and I think crowdsourcing is playing a big role in this, and so is participation. It's this idea that any of us can become a whistleblower. We can call it. We can call the bullshit when we see it. We can bring transparency to things that used to be opaque. And I think that's a kind of a big responsibility of us as a group. And here are some of the people that are doing it. There's organizations like Made in a Free World. It's a system that sits inside of your supply chain and actually detects where you're using human slavery as part of your supply chain and your production. There's organizations like MECO. We're very good friends with them as well. No commercial. But it's this whole idea of my data is mine, and I will ultimately make a decision to transact it with the brands that I'm interacting with. Number 2, financial democracy. This is all based on the premise of, our governments, our businesses, and our society needs to be more accountable. Bitcoin has really kicked this off and drove this. This is really the first use case of the blockchain. How many people have put blockchain in their presentation slides this week? How many times have we seen it? Quite a few? No? Oh, okay, cool. I thought this was going to be like the Starbucks My Idea slide, where everyone had it in. But the shift from centralized networks to decentralized networks to distributed, and that's really the power of the blockchain, right? So we're democratizing financial transactions, and we're making them open and transparent. And so what we talk about here, and really what the power of financial democracy or the blockchain is the API of we. So you probably have heard of the API of me, and I think crowdsourcing and participation is the API of we. So how can we all collectively move forward this financial democracy? Some of the folks in blockchain that are doing this, my buddy Steve here in the audience knows way more about this than I do, but Ethereum is one of the kind of the breakout leaders in the blockchain. And they're the ones that are working with commercial enterprises or enterprises around creating their own specific use case of what they can do on the blockchain. And you're kind of seeing, different teams form, like Airbnb just did an acquisition of a blockchain team this week. You've got organizations like KPMG that's setting up an entire blockchain practice of like 75 people here in London. So blockchain is going to be kind of a platform for all of us to use to drive this financial democracy. Third point, this is kind of near and dear to our hearts at Better, is this whole idea of not being married to a product roadmap, but being married to a stakeholder roadmap. So what do your stakeholders want? What do your consumers want? What do your employees want? What are the experiences necessary to drive that? What objectives are you trying to achieve? And don't shoehorn a product into that, but really focus on that stakeholder roadmap and that stakeholder experience. And so we often say, don't try to do something that somebody else could do better, because it's only going to end in disappointment. So even for our team at Better, what we're doing is we're really selective about the brands and the projects that we work with. We only set ourselves up for success. We don't want to say we've got a product or a solution for a problem or an opportunity if we don't have it. So what we do is we bring our broader network to the table to bring those solutions alive. Product, we can sell lots of technology, but what are you doing with it? One size does not fit all. So again, as part of our kind of bespoke consultative approach, we can bring in any type of technology and any type of platform provider. And really focus on driving, well, what is that mutual value commercialization across that stakeholder group? So if you're going to drive employee change, how do the employees share in that change? If you're going to drive innovation with your consumers, how are your consumers going to participate in that innovation? So we talk about mutual value creation. I think some companies that are doing this really well, and again, really inspire us, is this whole concept of doing it right or doing it better. I think Tesla is a great example. All of their patents are out there. Anybody can use them. Kiva, making material impact in developing nation communities. Their loans are almost 100% paid with full interest, but they're making a great impact in the communities that they're loaning money to. I love the example of Shinola in Detroit. So Shinola set up shop right in the middle of the kind of disaster zone of Detroit, where there's extremely high unemployment. And they took individuals that were unemployed and turned them into craftsmen so that they could develop the products. And now Shinola is kind of a beacon for what could be possible in a really disastrous situation. And if you go to their website, it's really cool, because you'll see all of these people that have turned into artisans over the last 2 to 5 years. It's a really, really cool story. Number 4, no platform required. And again, this has been another learning for us around this whole idea of, some of us are platform providers in the room. Some of us have been platform providers in the past. But what we're really seeing is a platform isn't required. The technology is becoming commoditized. It's readily available. And what we encourage is that the brand becomes a platform, and the brand utilizes the necessary technologies to become that platform. And that's why we espouse, becoming a platform for participation. And so what we've done most recently is we've just leveraged, for one of our clients, a set of open source tools in order to deliver a participation experience, where the brand became a platform, and we didn't actually have to provision a platform for that brand. So they were just able to utilize the open source technologies that already existed out there and deliver a bespoke experience to drive the objectives that they were looking to achieve. And so, what we really focus on and what we really espouse is, don't take that, kind of that basic technology and just use it, but create that experience that's human. How are you going to get humans to interact and create and collaborate? And so what we did in just 5 short weeks is we launched a community that was highly bespoke, very custom, a unique experience for a diverse set of customer stakeholders or brand stakeholders. And we launched a community just in 5 weeks. And this community was launched yesterday with Lego Foundation. And it's a community to bring together practitioners, researchers, teachers, parents, students across the world to move forward. How do you learn through play? And I think the reason why I wanted to bring this up was, as we were working with the customer and we had very specific requirements about what they were trying to achieve, the experience that they wanted, the objectives they were trying to achieve, the outputs that they wanted to create, and the mutual value creation that they wanted to do with their stakeholders, we realized that there wasn't a platform that was going to do a service. So what we did was we designed the experience and then brought the open source technologies to play to power that experience. So, one of the pieces of advice I would give to all of us, even if we are platform vendors, is be an enabler, not a platform provider. So enable that participation and not focus on selling a platform. 5, so because there's this rapid pace of technology enhancements and innovation, and we're doing really cool stuff, one of the thoughts that kind of comes to mind for us is, well, where's the humanity in all of this? And one of the things that, I'm sure you guys have talked about it this week, is this whole concept of the gig economy. And so for us, we're going, okay, this has to happen. This is a natural evolution. We are going to be playing a role in this. But how could we make sure that we don't lose humanity while we're going through this process? And so some of the stats that we're seeing, 5 million jobs will be replaced by robots, okay? 43% of the US workforce will be freelance by 2020. This has actually become one of the topics with the US election around the tax collection agency in the US is very concerned because now they're not gathering the taxes at the source because there's so many freelance workers, they have to actually remit their taxes on their own. And so this is having an impact both on the revenue of the government, but it's also showing us that the US workforce wants to be highly distributed, independent, and freelancers. So again, what we're saying, is the sharing economy really the sharing economy of the wealth that's being created? So does cheap labor through Uber and scale and that profit, is that really ultimately what we want to drive towards? And I would actually put it out to you as practitioners and those that are consuming crowdsourcing or the gig economy or the sharing economy to go, hey, well, what's the next thing beyond it? So if we were to imagine something different or better. And we all know where this came from. It came from Silicon Valley. And again, I would challenge us as global practitioners to go, is there just a better way? Is there a different way? Do we have to rely on what's coming out of Silicon Valley? Or could we create our own methodologies, our own business models, and our business models that are much more participative? So 3 recommendations or kind of 3 thoughts to kind of finish up here. Number 1, I think all of us as part of this movement, kind of build your tribe. So whatever you are doing, whether you're at a brand or whether you're a crowdsourcing company, find your tribe, build your team, those that believe in what you're doing. Number 2, go on a mission and challenge yourself to do the impossible. So challenge, if you're inside at Unilever, and I know Matt is here, and Matt's really good at this, but challenge the norm inside of Unilever. If you are a practitioner and you're advising a customer, challenge them on what's possible. And I think number 3, be relentless. Sweat the economics and the humanity of the business model that you're espousing. So really focus on, am I getting the top line, but am I also, am I driving humanity through participation or crowdsourcing? So one of the things that we often talk about at Better, and I'll try to explain this concept, is what if Uber and Google and Facebook actually had to share in the reward, to share in the financial success that they've created? So every time I've used Google and every time I've clicked on a link, or every piece of content that I've submitted to Facebook, or every drive that I've done for Uber, why am I not sharing in the overall wealth creation of that company? How come I'm not on the share list for the IPO? How come I'm not sharing in that financial reward? And so that's one of the things that we challenge our clients and our brands about, is if you are going to go on this journey of creating a new business model, and if you are going to embark on crowdsourcing, it's not a gift card, it's not a prize, it's not some points in a system that says I'm better than somebody else inside of the community. How is that participant in that business model sharing in the value that's being created? And that's really the mission that we're on at Better.